Hi, my name is Dwayne Gathers, and welcome to Civitas LA, and happy 2021 to all of our listeners. We look forward to our work elevating diverse and emerging voices in the civic conversation of our dynamic region, and we appreciate all who have joined us last year, and we look forward to you joining us on this journey this year. Each episode, we hear from, learn from, and are inspired by a new generation of civic entrepreneurs who are forging a path forward in making Los Angeles a stronger, more resilient, and connected group of citizens. Now, more than ever, we aim to elevate civic discourse, foster community connections, and promote civic knowledge and engagement across the greater Los Angeles region while elevating diverse and emerging voices in that conversation. The fight for public space in urban centers can be fraught and contentious, but streets have always played a large part in the formation of community in urban centers, and the street really remains an essential part of the LA landscape and our collective consciousness. In this time of COVID-19, shifts in government policy and business practices has resulted in an increase in the prioritization of outdoor spaces, particularly streets, as the focal point of our public and communal lives. The tendency of public space to foster community can occur organically, but often must exist within a framework of policy and an intentional and organizational government body whose responsibility it is to care for and nurture our streets. And within the city of Los Angeles, this work falls upon the Department of Public Works. Consisting of more than 5,500 men and women responsible for the design, construction, renovation, and operation of public projects ranging from bridges to wastewater treatment plants and libraries, curbside collection and graffiti removal, and maintenance of streets, sidewalks, sewers, street lights, and street trees, the department is committed to delivering projects and programs that enhance the quality of life, economic growth, public health, and the environment for all Angelenos. Leading this massive undertaking has been Kevin James, who most recently served as president of the Board of Public Works Commission for 7 years and was one of the longest-serving presidents in the history of the board until June of 2020. So we're really delighted to have Kevin with us to discuss the role of the Board of Public Works Commission, the Department of Public Works and its various divisions, their impact on building community, and the impact on the various street initiatives undertaken by the city over the years. Kevin, welcome to Civitas LA.
Dwayne, thank you. It's great to be here. One correction I might add on the presidency of the Board of Public Works. I am the longest-serving consecutive president of the Board of Public Works, which might matter to some of my predecessors who were there a little bit longer than I was over time.
We stand corrected. I appreciate that. Kevin, welcome. I'm so glad that you have you here. Share with us, as we get started, Kevin, a little bit about your background, please.
Sure. I came to Los Angeles, Dwayne, in the 1980s, really just looking for a community that would accept me, looking for a diverse and exciting way of life for a young kid coming out of law school. And I ended up practicing law in the city of Los Angeles with a big firm. And then I found my way into the United States Attorney's Office as an assistant United States attorney. After going back into private practice, I literally stumbled into a radio career because of people that I was representing and handling a couple of high-profile cases. I ended up being invited on a local radio station to be a legal commentator. And that ended up in a late-night radio show in Los Angeles where I covered City Hall. I found it to be an interesting building from my days as the board chair of a nonprofit AIDS Project Los Angeles.
Okay.
We worked a lot with this city. I found it to be an interesting place, so I covered it a lot on radio. And that ended up creating a candidacy, an opportunity for a candidacy. And I ran for mayor in 2013, and I came in, as Mayor Garcetti likes to say, a close third. And I endorsed him. The exit polls show that my voters supported him. And I remember when he called asking if I wanted to join his administration. He knew because we had debated each other 42 times during the primary.
Wow.
That infrastructure was a big priority for me. He also knew that I had a legal background. He thought it would be a good fit for the Board of Public Works, and I agreed to do it.
Okay. Well, I think and probably in some corners, public works doesn't sound terribly, sexy for any position in government. So, how did you find your way into public works, and what did you find when you got to Public Works Department?
Oh, I think it's I think it's the sexiest part of municipal government because it is the bedrock of city services. Everything that really matters in people's lives from the moment that they step outside of their home, they're dealing with our public works department. I tell young people when they come in to ask questions about what we do at Public Works, how many of them walked on a sidewalk or were even in public transit or even private transportation on one of our roads, enjoyed the shade of a tree. All of that is part of the public works department. So we touch everyone's life. And you understand that quickly once you have responsibility in that area and you start hearing from people about things that they're interested in for their communities.
Sure. That's a great statement, Kevin, and I appreciate that. And we're going to cover that in the conversation. But before we get to that, I do want to make a note here to our listeners who are used to our lightning round taking place at the very end of the conversation. This year, we're going to switch it up. We got a lot of feedback saying that we love the lightning round, and it would be great to warm up the guests earlier in the episode. So to get a sense of you and your Los Angeles, we're going to start with a lightning round of questions, and we want quick, succinct, crisp answers.
Well,
Are you ready?
good. Lightning round. Those are the questions that I will know the answers to.
Right. A lot of people come overly prepared. Anyway, we're a podcast about Los Angeles, so we want to get a sense of your Los Angeles. Favorite restaurant or two in Los Angeles?
Okay, I've got to do 3.
Okay.
Okay, so
already breaking the rules.
I
and
am
it's only
already
the first,
breaking the rules.
Only the first episode of the year.
Former broadcaster, the broadcasting rules are meant to be broken, I suspect. But I live in Laurel Canyon.
Okay.
So one of my favorite restaurants, and it has been for such a long time, is Pache in the Canyon. It's a neighborhood restaurant. I think it's very special. It's a great place to take a date. Los Angeles Magazine has often referenced it for that. One of my favorite restaurants in the San Fernando Valley, my favorite Mexican food restaurant is Casa Vega on Ventura.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's an institution in the city of Los Angeles, of course. And then I'm friends with a couple of chefs around town, and one of them is Chef Marilyn. She's very well known, South LA. She has a restaurant called Soul Food Express on Crenshaw.
Oh, right.
And I benefit mostly from her cooking, from various catering jobs that she's done in numerous events around the city of Los Angeles. And so Chef Marilyn and I have become friends. And I think Chef Marilyn's cooking is probably my favorite cooking in all of the city.
Okay. Favorite street food?
Okay, 2. Tommy's Burgers. Street food for me is walk up.
Yep,
I can
absolutely.
walk up. And Tommy's on Rampart.
Yep.
Oftentimes I'm a big college football fan. So maybe after a USC game, there's a crew that goes to Tommy's on occasion. So I love Tommy's at Beverly and Rampart. And then Cinco Punto in Boyle Heights.
Okay. I don't know
it is one of the true jewels in the city of Los Angeles.
Okay.
It's been there a very long time.
Favorite watering hole?
Well, there's 2, and they're so they're so different. And one of them has been closed down for a little while. Bar Marmont on Sunset, just on the border of Los Angeles and West Hollywood. It's in the city of LA. For kind of a Hollywood bar, and then a neighborhood bar that I enjoy is Akbar on Sunset. Very famous, well known for its music, and I hope it survives through the pandemic.
Favorite place to take a visitor to Los Angeles?
Runyon Canyon.
Favorite hidden LA gem? Tell us something we don't know.
How about this? At the Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant over in the Sepulveda Basin, there is a complete hidden gem called the Japanese Garden. And it is a beautiful facility that is part of the reclamation plant, but it's available for events. It's a wonderful place for tourists to come. It's cultural. It's beautiful. It has incredible grounds, and it's part of the Department of Public Works.
Okay. Now, this is going to get us into a lot of trouble this year, but we're going to ask it anyway. Favorite neighborhood?
When I moved here, well, actually, even before I moved here, Dwayne, as a kid, I was probably 10 or 11 years old. And I'm from Oklahoma and Texas, and so the mountains we have here are real mountains. I mean, the foothills to me look like mountains. And when I saw the hillside communities in the middle of the second largest city in America. I said one day I'm going to live there. I live in Laurel Canyon. I have January 1 will be 28 years. And I feel like that's just my favorite neighborhood in the city because of it's just so unique. You don't have a canyon hillside community in the middle of every
In the heart of the
large city
Sure.
center, like we
Okay.
do here.
Well, Kevin, that was great. We really appreciated that. Now let's dive into our conversation today. So, for those of our listeners who don't know much about the Public Works Department, give us a sense of what it does, how it's organized, and how it does go about impacting the everyday life of Angelinos.
As you mentioned, it's a large department. I think it's the second largest department in the city of Los Angeles, actually. I think it has surpassed the fire department. So largest is LAPD, second is Public Works.
Mm-hmm.
It's divided up into 5 bureaus and then
Mhm.
5 divisions within the Board of Public Works. The 5 bureaus are very significant and bureaus that people are very familiar with. The largest is the Bureau of Sanitation. Now, sanitation is, and every bureau, Dwayne, in its own special way, does very critical city service work that is not necessarily descriptive in its name.
Okay.
Sanitation is not just the trash department, for example. In many ways, they serve environmentally as the environmental protection agency for the city. They run the water treatment plants. They manage stormwater runoff policy, handle the city's recycling policy, work in partnership, obviously, with the Department of Water and Power on larger community water policy and water issues. So it is much more than the trash department.
Yeah.
The second bureau that I'll mention is Streets LA, also formerly known as the Bureau of Street Services. In many ways, Streets LA has become, rather than just a street repair department, it's become an environmental department as well because of numerous brand new environmental innovations that they're utilizing. Just in the last week, there was a story in the Daily News about the use of recycled water bottles making a stronger asphalt now that's being tested in a pilot program by Streets LA. But
Wow.
something that's different from their name. They also have the Urban Forestry Division
Sure.
managing our street trees. And they also have the Special Events Division where the large events that come through the city of Los Angeles for permitting, like the Academy Awards or
Right.
the Grammys, the one-stop shop for the permitting process is handled in Streets LA. And people wonder why that is. Well, because they manage the street closures in the city of Los Angeles.
Okay.
So that's also a large bureau. The third one is the Bureau of Street Lighting. Pretty self-explanatory, although as you'll know in your work experience with the city of Los Angeles, the Bureau of Street Lighting also manages our 5G build-out and much of our technological advances, even the placement of our EV chargers around the city of Los Angeles.
Okay.
The Bureau of Contract Administration, self-explanatory, except for the fact that in addition to administering the contracts, not just the billions of dollars of contracts at the Department of Public Works, but also other city contracts in other departments. But it also has the Office of Wage Standards.
Oh,
So the
interesting.
Bureau of Contract Administration has does the enforcement for our minimum wage laws, and the director, John Reamer, also serves as the city's public works inspector.
Okay.
So that's something else that contract administration does. And then we have the Bureau of Engineering. Bureau of Engineering, pretty, again, self-explanatory in what it does, but it also is an environmental arm of much of what the city of Los Angeles builds, and it is a large permitting department too. Interestingly enough, the Bureau of Engineering is the lead agency in the city of Los Angeles for the project of, in essence, the project manager, if you will, of the Bridge Home homeless shelter sites around
Sure.
the city of Los Angeles.
Wow.
So those are the 5 bureaus.
Mm-hmm.
The 5 divisions that are overseen by the Board of Public Works We have an accounting division that is just special to the Department of Public Works. You can imagine the billions of dollars that come through a procurement department like that. Secondly, we have a public affairs office, of course. Third, and these are new, the mayor created the Mayor's Office of Film and Television Production. That is a division within the Board of Public Works that in my years there, I was the mayor's film liaison as a partnership to create the partnership with the entertainment industry and the new media industries for permitting in the public right-of-way. And then there are two new divisions as well. The City Forest Officer. The City Forest Officer is, just as it sounds, a chief executive, if you will, for the urban forest that is there to work with all of the city departments that have their hands into the urban canopy. The fire department when it comes to fire safety issues with street trees. The Department of Water and Power keeping trees away from power lines. The Recreation and Parks Department. So all of those have a share of the urban forest policy. So that's managed by the city forest officer, and most notably, perhaps, the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration and Safety.
Interesting.
That was an office that was recreated after the Aliso Canyon gas leak, and we used it at the Board of Public Works as a bit of an incubator to grow that department, which we're now doing on the newest city department, which is the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office.
Okay.
That is being created to deal with the environmental impact in an urban environment, in a municipal environment, to ensure that we don't have disparate impacts and inequality regarding the way that some environmental impacts various communities versus others. So it's an environmental justice department, if you will, and we're also incubating that at the Board of Public Works, much like we did the Petroleum Administration Office.
Interesting. So you were president of the board of the Public Works Commission for 7 years, making you the longest consecutive serving president of that board. Share with some of us some of the key initiatives during your tenure.
I was going to mention a minute ago Streets LA, but I went a different direction to tell you about the plastic bottles in our paving. The one I was going to mention too that I'll mention now is Cool Pavement.
Okay.
Streets LA. LA is the largest city I think in the world to test this new Cool Pavement technology. It cools the street and lessens the heat island effect from 10 to 12 degrees. So we tested it first in Canoga Park. That saves air conditioning power, and it cools an area because you don't have the heat island effect that happens particularly in the summertime. We are doing our first, in partnership with Google and other partners from the private sector, our first electronic technologically advanced tree inventory. You can imagine the benefits of having a tree inventory online. We're doing that for the first time in the city's history. CleanStat. CleanStat is something created by, again, the Bureau of Sanitation, and it is a scoring system where our trash trucks and our street sweepers that drive the city of Los Angeles have GPS and cameras on them. We record every block in the city of Los Angeles. There are 70,000 of them, by the way. Every quarter, and we are able to score, and the dashboard's available online. We're able to score the cleanliness of every neighborhood in a couple of different areas, one including trash and others including graffiti. Accessing LA. Accessing LA is and our small business academy are things that were created at this Board of Public Works in our tenure. Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez was instrumental in starting the Small Business Academy. And Alda Garcia, who's on the Board of Public Works now, along with Jessica Caloza, have really grown the Accessing LA, which is a quarterly workshop that we do around the city of Los Angeles. We'd like to do it every other month, but right now it's quarterly, where we have businesses interested in small businesses and businesses from all over the city. We especially focus on minority owned businesses, women owned businesses, LGBTQ community owned businesses to bring them in to provide an orientation on how to bid for city contract work
Hmm.
and how to be a contract partner with the city of Los Angeles. So those are, and then I mentioned earlier the Abridge Home homelessness
Right.
shelter program. That is a program that was the project manager was at the Department of Public Works and the Bureau of Engineering.
Hmm.
So those are just a few of them, but
Sure.
there are years of them.
Well, I'm curious, particularly about this ability for residents throughout the city to go online and see how their community scores in terms of these metrics that the mayor's team is putting forth. Is there a website that we can point to here and now that you can share with us where any resident in the city can go and find out how their street and how their community fares in terms of this data?
There is, Dwayne, for the clean stat that I mentioned, it's cleanstreetsla.com.
Okay.
But there are a couple of others that, as you asked me that question, I'm reminded that I would like to mention to you.
Sure.
So cleanstreetsla.com is for CleanStat. And technology has changed the way, particularly since Mayor Garcetti took office. It's totally changed the way that we deliver city services. He's the technology mayor. He's proven himself to be. We're the #1 digital city in America. Oftentimes we get that award year in and year out. One of the others I wanted to mention to you, if you look at the Streets LA website,
Okay.
uh, you can also see the whether or not your street is going to be scheduled for pavement preservation coming
Okay.
up. So that's something that neighbors like to see a year ahead of time
Okay.
when streets are going to be paved. There's also a link on that same website at streetsla.lacity.org where you can see the streets that are scheduled and the routes that are currently published for street sweeping in the city of Los Angeles. We've been working in a couple of areas of technology. We continue to work with the Department of Transportation. All of our street sweepers now have GPS on them. So our DOT parking enforcement officers know when a street sweeper has finished a route or when it's about to start a route. The reason that matters to community members is we have a window of time that blocks off parking availability.
Right.
You're familiar with it, Dwayne. You can't park Mondays between 10 a.m. and noon.
You can't park 7 to 9 on
Sure.
Rossmore in the morning, else you're going to get towed.
Sure. And that's people want their streets cleaned. It's a state law, frankly, because of drainage that happens in our streets. But we thought that the street sweeper has to start somewhere. So at 10:10 on a 10 to noon closure, in essence, or a 10 to noon restriction, the sweeper's gone. So you could park for the next hour and 50 minutes if the DOT officer knew that the street had been swept.
Okay.
So that's why we have our street sweeping apparatus now communicating with our DOT officers so that the public will know once you see that the street sweeper has gone by, you can now park on that street.
Okay.
And the next thing we're working on, the next level, if you will, is basically an app that people can subscribe to so that they can just look at their smartphone and see if the street sweeper's been by or not.
Okay.
That's something that's still being worked on. We were making more progress before COVID hit.
Yep.
So it's taken a bit of a bump in the road, but we will get back to that.
Okay. Well, I want to backtrack a few years because I really remember the initiative launched by the mayor and your team in 2013 called Great Streets Initiative. And this was launched to help target resources to neighborhoods and strengthen critical corridors throughout our city. And a couple of key principles around this were community engagement and neighborhood character. So I'm curious to know, here we are in 2020, now episode being released in 2021, where does that initiative stand? What are some of its successes?
So we could do an entire show on just Great Streets, Dwayne. I'm glad you're focusing on it. We love it. You're right about the reason the mayor wanted to it was executive directive number 1, by the way.
Sure, I
And
remember
the
that.
reason the mayor was so excited about it, even before he became mayor, when he was a council member, he knew that that was going to be one of the first things that he did as mayor. And let me just briefly summarize kind of the theory behind it. Then I'll give you some more of the details because we've got so much has happened around it. There's been such great benefit to the community. Again, it's been slowed a bit because of COVID, but there have been some new developments related to great streets that have been created because of COVID.
Okay.
So the original purpose was to create community, walkability, sustainability, and safety with the countless diverse neighborhoods in the city of Los Angeles. I talked earlier about the 70,000 blocks that we have in the city of Los Angeles. So there was just a lot of excitement and around opportunity about the Great Streets concept. And what you do is you basically take a city block, maybe a little bit longer, or maybe you kind of both sides of the street, and you redesign it, re-engineer it in a way that makes it more walkable, more welcoming, a location where people can, a destination where people in the community can walk and stay and spend time. So it comes a bit with street redesign, with economic development, with parklets, moving cars off the street in certain circumstances, and creating this welcome environment that is focused on open space and people getting together and not just walking by. And also, it's a bit of an incubator, if you will, for alternative modes of transportation. So we've focused on initially one street per council office. Now I think we're up to 35.
How were neighborhoods selected to participate?
So the mayor has a great streets team.
Okay.
And that make those selections. There are competitions that exist around them. Council offices obviously are able to make recommendations, and so some of those were accepted. I mentioned 35. It may be 35. It looks like the count I've got now between 28 and 35, and we're really looking for transformative, community-driven street infrastructure projects. So one that I would focus on, South Robertson. South Robertson, and by the way, another thing that I love about these projects is its incredible collaboration.
Sure.
So with South Robertson, we're working obviously with SORO, the South Robertson Neighborhood Council. And and you take kind of South Robertson between Kincaid and Cadillac. It's got two. That one has two council offices.
Sure.
Council District 5 and Council District 10.
10. Yeah.
And there was there's city funding that come with each of these. Grant funding, so various communities and neighborhoods can apply for the grants. Like I said, we had some friendly competitions for grant funds over the years as well. And for the grant related to South Robertson, we had improvements that were new concrete and painted curb extensions, signals, ADA compliant curb ramps, obviously trees and planters, artistic crosswalks, street furniture, a bus landing pad, and then you have other areas, Sunset Boulevard, for example, in Silver Lake, the Pocket Park that is kind of famous because it has the green dots. It's near Hyperion. Just another example of an element, a Great Streets element that's at another, just at another location that I just think of off the top of my head. We had a Great Streets challenge that the Board of Public Works actually partnered with our Great Streets team and the Department of Transportation, and we were able to kind of run it, if you will, out of the Board of Public Works. Right now, through the Great Streets program, we have engaged 70,000 residents at last count through about 35 projects. So we've got 28 projects, then maybe there's another 7 that are in the pipeline. but we've engaged about two. If you do the math there, it's about 2,000 residents per project.
Okay.
Obviously, there's some movement there, but we've had a number of community groups and pop-up demonstrations. Millions of dollars have been invested. We are working with, I mentioned collaboration. There are a number of community partners that are very well known around the city that we've worked with. The Community Coalition in South LA
Sure.
is we've worked with on the Manchester Avenue and Vermont Avenue intersection, that project. Tiachuca's Centro Cultural in Sylmar for San Fernando Road between Polk and Hubbard Streets. The Central City Neighborhood Partners in MacArthur Park, and the Heart of Del Rey in the Centinela Avenue between Short Avenue and Braddock. So
Sure.
these are just some examples, but we have community partners in essentially, I want to say all of them, Dwayne, but I'm not sure.
Sure.
Essentially all of them.
Uh-huh.
We have community partners, including neighborhood councils that we're working with, and homeowners associations, and activists and advocates.
Sure.
And so it really is. It's building community in more than one way.
So that's great, and I did see that under the initiative, the mayor put out a DIY manual so that communities could be the drivers, of this change in their respective communities. But one of the things I'm curious about is for a city known for its car culture, how challenging has it been from a public policy standpoint and a government management standpoint to get people to think differently and to reimagine their streets and repurpose them for pedestrians in a different way from a city that's been, so focused on the car and using streets as simply a device to get people from point A to B?
So municipal government, I love it because I think it's the form of government and the level of government where you can get the most done. And this is just a prime example of what you can do when you work with the community and you bring as many stakeholders as possible to the table. Anytime you talk about reimagination or change, you're inviting, appropriately so, but you're inviting a lot of different opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And this collaboration takes time, it takes work, it takes commitment, and it takes dedication. But we've seen one of the things that we see most consistently is people's love for their city and pride for their neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a work in progress on every one of the great street projects. And some have moved along faster than others. Some start earlier than others, and a lot of that has to do with grant money and the competitions and prioritizing projects. But they don't come without, especially in the world of social media, they don't come without discussion and debate, and sometimes over objections. Because sometimes you have to take a vote.
That was delicately put. There are sometimes discussions. I like that. I like that. Well, I know, we're sitting here, at the studios at Emerson College, and we appreciate them for hosting us here on Sunset Boulevard. And we know certainly, Hollywood, episode 1 for us was a conversation with Councilmember Mitchell Farrell's team member Dan Halden and Lee One from Gensler, where we talked about the Walk of Fame master plan, which is a great reimagining of that great street for LA. I'm curious to know if this initiative plays into that or is a result of that came about some years ago.
Oh, I think they're at least first cousins. They're certainly closely related. And being at the Board of Public Works, I had the honor and it was a privilege, and it was a lot of fun to work on with CD13 on that very project. I was involved in the earliest meetings with Dan and with the council member and with the city departments, and I've seen the renderings. It's very exciting what they are proposing. I've been involved in the policy discussions on what we're going to do with parking and how we're going to describe the fact and educate the community on the fact that we're not really losing that many parking places
Right.
at the end of the day, so that you don't kind of lose lose the narrative
Yep.
because of the Twitterverse with people that might oppose it. And I've also had familiarity in working with the Walk of Fame and with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce and with the Hollywood Trust because of my years as the film liaison for the city, in addition to Public Works. But so it's and I know that it's been a real priority for several elected officials in various offices over the years, Hollywood Boulevard and remaking Hollywood Boulevard, because it is such an economic driver for the city and the region. It's a destination for people that come from all over the world, and it should be more walkable, more welcoming, and more of a destination where, rather than coming to take a couple of pictures of a couple of stars on the sidewalk and the footprints and handprints at the Chinese Theater, it can be, and it's becoming more of a destination where people can come and spend the day. And if you look at what Council District 13 is proposing, it's very exciting, and it is still going to work well with mobility in the city of Los Angeles, even people that need or want to stay in their cars. The redesign of Hollywood Boulevard does not preclude mobility by automobile, but it certainly does increase options for what people in the local area would want to enjoy, and certainly what people from all over the country and all over the world would like to enjoy.
Well, it's a world-class destination, and we were really excited to have them on. So for those listening, we refer you to episode 1. Kevin, I know we have a little bit of time left, and I really want to talk about this COVID environment that we're living in now. So, how do you think the pandemic has reshaped LA's consideration of its relationship to our streets as places of public life? And I know one of the mayor's initiatives was the Alfresco initiative. Can you describe that for our audience, and has that been successful? And what do you think will come out of that in a post-pandemic environment?
Well, Dwayne, I think the pandemic has changed everything, and not just in the way we deliver city services through city government at all levels. But even in the private sector. I mean, I think it's going to be real interesting to see what the percentage of people working remotely is going to be now. But to focus on streets, I mean, alfresco and alfresco dining, it's something that Los Angeles has been so unique for because of our weather. And because of all of the special neighborhoods and being in the culinary capital of the country, with some of the best food that's available anywhere in the United States being right here. And COVID really forced the city to I hate to always use the word reimagine, but to look again at what is available for outdoor dining in the city of Los Angeles because of its safety value around COVID. I believe that once we can dine outdoors again, that alfresco is only going to continue to grow. We have had to rethink the availability of the sidewalks and the public right-of-way. That is not going to change. I think the reforming that will continue. COVID just was the jump start.
Absolutely.
And also the permitting process. We were able to streamline the permitting process. We always talk about that in government, but until you try it, because you see of all the stakeholders that are involved, everyone that streamlining permitting can impact, and dealing with the legal issues and the potentially environmental issues. Well, when you're faced with a city emergency like we were, that's a real incentive to move a lot faster, and we did. And I think that that's also a good model for us to use. You mentioned earlier Slow Streets as another initiative that came out of COVID. That wasn't a public works project. It was a Department of Transportation project. But obviously our Streets LA Bureau worked well with DOT on implementing that project. That is a distant cousin, if you will, of the Great Streets concept.
Okay.
Great Streets focuses on community and economic neighborhoods and commercial neighborhoods combined, mixed use, if you will. Slow Streets was designed for just residential communities in many ways, to provide more use and safer use of outdoor space, closer to people's home that would relieve some of the crowding of public parks because of the pandemic. And it has worked. By the way, all of the before we even spent the time and resources to create a slow street environment, the community had to come to us indicating that they wanted it. So much of that outreach work was already done by the community before they even got to us. And so we didn't have the objections, if you will, to deal with.
Right.
So that helped get slow streets off the ground a bit faster than it might otherwise would have done so. But again, you've created another model that can work for expanding it if communities want to do it.
Sure. Well, this is really exciting, and to think, the work that we do here in talking to civic leaders like yourself throughout our region, and just within the city of Los Angeles being 465, some would say 470 square miles and 7,500 miles of streets. You've really made public works and streets sound very, very sexy today, and I think it's just terrific. So I'm just really curious. These are critical issues that really impact our lives on a day-to-day basis. And I think the look and feel of streets gives us a sense of the look and feel of that community. So how did you view streets before you went into this role? And how do you view streets now, looking back on your 7 years in that particular role?
I can't even remember how I looked at a street before my public works job now, because I've been in it as long as I have. You will never, once you start the job at Public Works or even work for a city bureau that has anything to do with streets, I think it changes the way you look at the built environment and streets for the rest of your life. It certainly has for me. So much that I can't even remember the things that I would never see before.
The things you see,
things
you notice now.
The
things you notice now.
You notice now, and not only do you notice it, you have thoughts about it. You have ideas about how you would change it or improve it or use it as a model for something else. You don't. I'll never look at as one of the lines I never look at a curb cut the same again. I mean, you notice those things. I even know what they're called. The yellow dots on the street are truncated domes, and they don't have to be yellow.
Okay.
But it really does. One of the great things, and it's why I tell people, get involved in your community. If you're not interested in a career in the city, spend time with a nonprofit or a neighborhood council or a homeownership group, the PTA, whatever, because it does affect the way that you look at community and your surrounding environment and even public safety.
And that is what we are here to do here at Civitas LA, to foster civic engagement. Absolutely. So I'm not going to put you on the spot, and this is not associated with the lightning round at all. But given that we have 7,500 miles of streets, and you've overseen this massive bureau,
about 26,000 lane miles,
that does all this great stuff. So I just want to know, so what are your favorite streets in Los Angeles?
Okay, so I have one favorite. This actually came up in the mayor's race in 2013, and even with my years of experience now in public works, my favorite street in LA has not changed. Sunset Boulevard. One, it's famous. I mean, there's a musical written of it, right?
It's a great movie, old school movie.
It is cultural. If you can drive Sunset Boulevard. How many cities will you drive through? Maybe 3 or 4. Los Angeles, West Hollywood, Beverly Hills, I guess, and no, you go north of Santa Monica, so 3. But you can go from Echo Park and the very special neighborhood that Echo Park is with the history of our city and the city center, if you will, by Dodger Stadium by a few yards, all the way through Silver Lake, then into Hollywood, the heart of Hollywood. Then you approach and you brush up against the hillside communities and the Hollywood Hills. And just that far, by the way, you've gone through the city's history, the diversity of the city, the fame of the city, and tourist destinations, and Hollywood studios. Then you go past West Hollywood and Beverly Hills, and you go all the way through Brentwood and the Palisades to the ocean. So I
And you
think
go
that's
past UCLA, so I mentioned UCLA.
one of the number one public university in America, one of the most significant in the world. There are other streets. I mean, I love Lankershim and North Hollywood, the NoHo Arts District. Is a great destination. Crenshaw Boulevard, the history of Crenshaw and what it means to our nation's history. It's a bit torn up right now because of the Crenshaw line.
The Metro line, yes.
But the Destination Crenshaw is the name of a major project, but it's going to be. I mean, it's the name of an institution. It's going to be the name of an institution in Los Angeles. I mean, you think about with the Lucas Museum and everything that's happening around South Los Angeles, the policies that I think something else is another topic maybe for another day. But one of the things that COVID taught us to see more brightly than we'd ever seen before was the contrast between the inequities that have existed in our communities. And we now have policies that we more clearly understand the value of keeping people in their communities and in their homes and not being forced out by economic development. You can find a way to create the jobs around economic development and the shot in the arm that communities want while allowing your community to stay in place. I think that Crenshaw and the Crenshaw line and the business growth with the history around Lemert Park and the Vision Theater and everything that's happening, it really is on the cusp of a great a great time in the city's history for equality and for social justice and for racial justice that is going to be centered in South LA. And so I think Crenshaw is going to be, it's on a lot of people's list already.
Sure.
It's going to be on a lot more people's list in the next 5 years.
Sure. Well, again, not to repeat ourselves, but we hope that that listeners will go back to episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8 when we had 4 dynamic leaders from South Los Angeles. So it's clearly a region on the move and a lot of great leaders in there as well. Kevin, in June, I know you transitioned from your role as president of the Board of Public Works, but you're still working with and for the mayor. So, just share what are you doing now and what's next for you?
I've loved the opportunity to move from the Board of Public Works to the Chief of Legislative Affairs. That's the job the mayor asked me to do. I was perfectly content in Public Works. I had considered leaving the city in March, Dwayne, and I'll mention this without getting into too much detail, to enter the political arena, and then COVID hit. And it was decided that we should not have a shakeup in the administration at Public Works or in the senior level at the mayor's office at that time around all the uncertainty and the importance of stability at that time. So I stayed on. The mayor moved me into the Chief of Legislative Affairs position to work on a number of key items for the new agenda for the second half of 2020, which is historic, obviously, with what we were dealing with COVID. But that included homelessness, police reform, and the COVID relief funding and reimbursements. And I've been able to work on those critical issues, and it's been a privilege and an honor to do so. But in 2021, I'm going to re-enter as we've got a vaccine now, and it's being distributed around the city of Los Angeles. And in 2021, I'm going to enter the political arena again, and that will necessitate my leaving City Hall. I'm going to return to private practice, the practice of law, and leave a couple of years of the Garcetti administration on the table. But I need to do that in order to fulfill what I want to do next in the local political arena in the city of LA.
Wow. Well, we appreciate learning that here on Civitas LA. Kevin, this has been a great conversation. We're really excited to learn about the work that you do and applaud the work that you and the team at the Department of Public Works does every day to make LA a stronger, more resilient, connected, cleaner place to live, work, and play and visit. So thank you for all that you do on behalf of the city. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Actually, I would like to thank you, Dwayne, for one, for inviting me, but two, for the commitment and the time and the work that goes into a production like this. Unless you do it, you don't know. And your listeners, your growing listener base, they appreciate the content. It's hard to know the amount of work that goes into it. And one of the things that really warms my heart is when we have community leaders that take their own time and resources and work to do work just like this, because the message that people receive about the work that we do, the ability to learn about their city government, is only a benefit to everyone. And I think the proof is in the pudding when you look at what our election turnout was this year. With local elections compared to prior years. And I think that that's going to continue. We may see a dip in 2022 because it's not a presidential race, but I think we have finally turned the corner in the city of Los Angeles on voter turnout and voter participation in local elections. And it is productions like this that make that difference.
Well, Kevin, we appreciate you being with us, and we look forward to following you and your civic leadership, whatever twists and turns it may take next. And to our audience, thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we hope you'll share this with your friends and associates. Civitas LA is excited about the year ahead and the opportunity to meet with, speak with, and feature great civic entrepreneurs moving our region forward. So as we said last year, and we will continue to say, until we meet again, stay strong, get involved. To learn more about Civitas LA and share feedback on this program, or if you have a recommendation about future programs, please visit our website at www.civitasla.com. And if you do have time, we hope you also take our end-of-year listener survey to give us feedback on how we can improve in the year ahead. And also, please connect with us on Facebook at Civitas LA, Instagram at Civitas_LA, and Twitter at Civitas_LA. We appreciate you listening, and we hope you'll share this with others. Stay strong, get involved, and stay safe.